Okay, so today we're diving into something I think is really cool, really fascinating. We're looking at indie game development.
Yeah, the indie game scene.
And it's interesting because like when you think about video games,
Yeah.
right, you think about these like huge studios with like massive budgets,
Yeah.
tons of people working on these projects. But we're really going to focus on the other side of the coin here.
Mm-hmm.
How are independent developers, often with like very limited funds,
Mm-hmm.
how are they creating games that are not only good,
Yeah.
but really compelling and innovative?
Right, and we've been looking at a bunch of material for this deep dive that really highlights
Yeah.
the creativity and the resourcefulness of the indie game scene. And I think there's some seriously valuable insights here
Yeah.
for anyone interested in, just how these smaller teams manage to do so much with often so little. Or even if you're not like a gamer or developer, it's just about making the most of what you've got.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And I think like you see that ingenuity like come to life in a lot of games that we all know and love.
Yeah.
So you think about games like Stardew Valley or Celeste,
Mm-hmm.
Hollow Knight. These are not games that were made with like, hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Mhm.
These are independent developers.
Yeah.
But these games have had massive critical acclaim.
Oh, yeah. Huge commercial success, too.
And they've really pushed, I think, creative boundaries in a way that like a lot of the bigger budget games haven't.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting. I think they connect with players in a different way because of that.
Yeah.
They're not always going for like blockbuster scale.
Right?
A lot of times it's about really tight gameplay loops or like really interesting stories or like a distinct art style or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And when you think about like the people behind these games, I think that passion really comes through, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So like you've got Toby Fox. He pretty much single-handedly developed Undertale.
Yeah.
Undertale, that's a great example.
Which had like such a huge impact, I think, on so many people.
Yeah.
But like really unique mechanics in that game.
Totally.
Or Chad and Jared Moldenhauer, they were the brothers who created Cuphead.
Oh, yeah, Cuphead.
And they were so committed to that like really distinctive animation style.
Oh, yeah. And the game's like so difficult, but in like a really engaging way.
Yeah, totally.
Totally. So those are just like prime examples of small teams or even individuals like achieving these really incredible things.
Yeah, it's really inspiring.
It is.
Yeah.
And it really embodies that indie spirit,
Yeah.
driven by a vision.
Totally.
Willing to do the work, and often like with very limited funds.
Yeah.
Which brings us to like the core question.
Yeah, the big question here.
It's like, how do they do it? How do indie developers manage to be so creative and innovative, even when they're working with like a really tight budget?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into that. Let's talk about like this core idea of resourcefulness.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Because when you don't have like, $1 million to throw at every single problem in development, it really forces you to think differently.
Yeah. Absolutely. You can't just like brute force your way through. You gotta be clever.
Yeah.
It's almost like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Right?
Totally. So like having limited funds can actually almost be like a...
Oh, I think it is. I think it's like a springboard for creativity because it forces you to make these really strategic decisions about like where to focus your energy, where to focus your limited resources.
Right.
And a lot of times that leads to like this less is more approach, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, what's the core mechanic here? What's the real story we're trying to tell?
Right.
As opposed to like fancy graphics or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And in the material we looked at, there were some really good examples of this.
Oh, yeah, tons of them.
So one that jumped out to me was Journey.
Oh, Journey. Yeah, that's a beautiful game.
Visually stunning.
Mm-hmm.
But the narrative is so minimalist, right? Like it's told through the gameplay, the environment.
Yeah.
But it has such a powerful emotional impact, I think, on players.
It really does. And it proves you don't need like a ton of dialogue to tell a really impactful story,
Yeah. Or even something like Flappy Bird. I mean, talk about simple gameplay.
Flappy Bird. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like almost deceptively simple, but so addictive, you know?
Yeah, totally. So it's like you don't need cutting edge graphics.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need like, this massive open world necessarily to have a really engaging experience for players.
Right. Sometimes like a well-executed, tightly focused core concept is more powerful.
Totally. So in the stuff we read, we found 5 essential tips for creating games on a budget.
Okay, yeah, I remember these.
Let's dig into these. The first one, is to embrace constraints.
Yeah, embrace constraints.
Which, I mean, that almost sounds counterintuitive, right?
It does a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd think more resources is always better.
Right, exactly.
But the idea here is that limitations can actually make you more creative.
Oh.
When you don't have unlimited options, you have to make choices.
Yeah.
And you have to focus on what really matters.
Right.
Like, what is the core gameplay? What's the unique story here? What's the art style we're going for?
Right.
And less about, like, chasing trends or putting in every single bell and whistle you can think of.
Right. Right. It's almost like having a smaller canvas. You have to be more intentional with every single element.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So tip number 2 is leveraging open source tools.
Okay, open source tools.
Now, for somebody who doesn't do game development, what does that practically mean?
So basically, there's all this software, all these platforms out there that are free to use or very cheap to use, and they provide, like, the building blocks for making a game.
Okay.
So Unity, Unreal Engine.
Okay.
These are great examples, super powerful tools,
Yeah.
lots of features, and they don't have the licensing fees that some of the other professional software has.
Okay.
And so that really levels the playing field, right?
Yeah.
Like, even a small team can access really powerful tech.
So that's a huge, that's a huge leg up, right?
It is. Yeah. And not just that. These engines usually have huge online communities, too.
Yeah.
So there's lots of support. And you can often find, like, pre-made assets and stuff.
Yeah.
Which can save a ton of time and money.
Right, right. All right. So tip number 3 was building a community.
Oh, yeah. Community is so important, especially for indies.
So how does that help? Like, both with the creative process, but also with staying on budget?
Okay, so it helps in a bunch of ways. First of all, you can get feedback early on, right? Like, you put your game out there on Reddit, Discord, whatever. People play it. They tell you what they think.
Yeah, yeah.
That can help you catch problems early.
Right.
Before you've sunk a ton of time and money into it.
Yeah.
Also, a good community can just be, like, super supportive and encouraging.
Yeah.
Which, when you're working on something tough, that really helps.
Totally.
And you can find collaborators, too, right?
Yeah.
People who are passionate about the same kind of game as you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then finally, it's just great for exposure, right?
Yeah.
You're getting the word out about your game without having to spend a ton on marketing.
Yeah, getting it in front of eyeballs.
Exactly.
Organically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, tip number 4. Iterate rapidly.
Oh, yeah. Iterate rapidly.
What is that all about?
So this is all about efficiency.
Okay.
Basically, you're making prototypes, really basic versions of your game or specific mechanics.
Okay.
Just to test things out, see what works, what doesn't.
Right.
And the goal is to learn quickly, but without spending a ton of time and money.
Right.
Like, think of it as sketching before you do, like, a final painting.
Yeah, yeah.
You're just trying stuff out, getting feedback, discarding what doesn't work.
Right. So being able to pivot quickly if something's not
exactly
working.
It's much more agile, much more cost effective.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like you're applying, like, the scientific method. Right.
Duly. Yeah. It's all about experimentation.
Game development.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the 5th essential tip is to focus on your unique voice.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
Especially in such, like, a crowded marketplace.
So crowded. Yeah. There are so many games out there.
Right.
So you really need something that sets you apart.
Yeah.
Right. And that could be, like, a gameplay mechanic that's never been seen before.
Okay.
Or a really distinct art style.
Yeah.
Or, like, a story that just really grabs people.
Yeah.
Something that makes you stand out.
It's like, when you look at Cuphead, you don't mistake that animation style for anything else.
Not at all. Super distinctive.
Right. And that was part of, I think, their success.
Definitely.
Even though it must have been so challenging to animate in that style.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Right.
But that commitment to the vision really paid off.
Okay, so those are some great tips for anyone, I think, out there listening who's thinking about getting into indie game development.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, the material we read also touched on a couple of other kind of, like, outside-the-box ways that indie developers are really pushing the envelope.
Okay.
And one of those was collaborate globally.
Oh, yeah. Global collaboration.
So talk about that. How's that playing a role in the indie game scene?
So the internet has made it so much easier to work with people from all over the world.
Right.
And for indie devs, this is huge, right? Because it means you're not limited to finding talent just in your city or your country.
Right.
You can find amazing artists, musicians, programmers all over the world, and that brings a lot of diversity and fresh perspectives to a project.
Right.
And you're often not paying the same rates as you would for someone local, right?
Yeah.
So you might find like an amazing composer in Eastern Europe
Yeah.
who's passionate about your game and willing to work for a smaller budget.
So it really expands the talent pool.
It does,
Yeah.
dramatically.
Yeah. And you can get some like really, really cool results from that.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, the other outside the box idea was to crowdfund wisely.
Crowdfunding.
Now, we're all familiar with Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, all those.
But what does it mean to crowdfund wisely?
That's the key, right?
Yeah.
Wisely.
Yeah.
So, first of all, you need a really clear vision for your game.
Okay.
You need a solid plan,
Yeah.
realistic funding goals,
Right.
and you have to be super transparent with your backers,
Yeah.
like constant updates,
Right.
answer questions, address concerns,
Right.
because that builds trust,
Yeah.
right? If people feel like they're part of the journey, they're much more likely to support you.
Right. Right.
But if you're not communicating, if you're not delivering on promises,
Yeah.
that can really damage your reputation.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
So it's not just about getting the money.
Right.
It's about building a relationship with your community.
Right. Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say is the most significant insight we can take away about how indie developers
Yeah.
manage to be so creative
Yeah.
and so innovative
Yeah.
with these budgetary limitations?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the constraints themselves
Yeah.
often lead to the innovation.
Okay.
You know, out of necessity, indie devs become masters of resourcefulness.
Right.
They have to focus on their core ideas,
Yeah.
use the tools available,
Yeah.
build those communities, iterate quickly,
Yeah.
and that leads to these unique, compelling games
Yeah.
that we might not get from, you know, a big studio that's maybe a little more risk averse.
Right. Right.
And I think it's important to go a bit deeper on embrace constraints, right?
Oh, okay.
It's not just about the concept itself, it's how limitations can force this very specific, unique artistic vision,
Yeah.
which might actually be more memorable for players, right?
Right.
So like Stardew Valley, for example, it wasn't just successful, but maybe because it was solo developed and
Yeah.
very focused, it had this unique charm that's kept people playing for years.
Yeah, totally.
So those constraints, they shape the game in a really positive way.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning again, like all those games we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Stardew Valley, Celeste, Hollow Knight,
Yeah,
the incredible work of Toby Fox, the Moldenhauer brothers on Cuphead.
totally.
These are all proof that passion, resourcefulness, a clear vision
Mm-hmm.
can lead to incredible games.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these games, the people who made them,
Yeah.
they're such an inspiration, right?
Yeah.
They show you what's possible, even without a huge budget.
Yeah.
You don't need millions of dollars to make something impactful.
So for you listening out there, think about that, right? Think about the impact of constraints
Yeah.
in any creative field.
Mm-hmm.
How could embracing limitations, like these indie devs do,
Yeah.
lead to unexpected solutions in your own area of interest, whatever it is you do?
Exactly.
The world of indie games, I think, is a perfect example of that principle in action.
It really is. Makes you think about what's possible when you're forced to think differently.
It does. It really does.
Huh.